So we've come through there. The slides will be coming up, and we've covered a little bit of ground with these webinars so far. We've had 2 sessions thus far. What does a financial planner actually do, and how does financial planning work? So my goal with these sessions is to really start at the ground level when it comes to financial advice. Fully aware that financial advice isn't a big part of life for a lot of people. So I really want to build that foundation of what advice is, what it looks like, what it can mean for people. And this third one today is really about how we apply that within the advice gallery. So I want to talk a little bit about our practice, how we go about things. There's a few things we do that are a little bit different, I think, in a good way. And then I'll walk through our process in a lot of detail. We have different meetings. We have different people involved at different stages. So I want to make sure we cover all of that off in the discussion today. And then there'll be some time for questions at the end. And also, I should probably mention it now, actually. We have agreed last week, Steve and us at the Advice Gallery, we've decided to offer until June 30th, 2024, we will waive all financial planning fees that apply to financial advice for people who have been referred to us by people at Loan Gallery, so friends, family, and clients or contacts. So just to repeat that, an introductory offer where we will waive all advice-related fees, so all of our fees when it comes to giving advice for anybody in that category. So it's quite a big commitment. Steve has stepped up. Steve's really committed to this process and he's excited. We all are to see where we can go with this. So just to repeat that, no advice or planning fees payable on any work done up until June 30th, 2024. All right, let's hop into it. Some disclaimers, the usual ones. We're not going to talk about anything specific today, so there's no real issue about crossing over into general or personal financial advice. But the big one is that we are recording this session today. So we've posted the other 2 over on our YouTube channel, one of our projects in January of 2024. We'll be chopping them up into more digestible parts. Anybody that's been online in the last year or 2 will recognize the importance of having short versions of videos. So we'll be chopping this up. So just as a heads up. Now, bear with me. I have managed to pick up a nice little cold, so I'm just going to clear my throat. And we'll revisit some of the ground we've covered thus far across the 2 webinars. And I should flag as well, we have scheduled out webinars now through till April. So if you go, you will have seen it on the website already. We have 3 more scheduled for January and February, and then we've got a run all the way through to April, so far already booked, and we'll be looking to continue these all year, every fortnight, a webinar of going through something of interest around financial planning. So we've laid the foundation now. This will be the kind of the 3rd foundation stone of what we're doing in this series. Then we're moving on to cash flow and money management, so covering that in a bit more detail. But if we throw our mind back, this is the pyramid that we use to talk about where we really help people. So there's a difference between strategic and tactical advice. We get a lot of tactical inquiries. What should I do with my super? What should I do with my insurances, etc.? This is the strategic picture. So we work with people over a period of time, normally years, to define their aspirations and objectives, and then from there, build their pyramid towards financial freedom. And that involves putting in those foundational stones of, working through what does employment mean? What does that mean for your budget, expenses and income? The debt picture, making sure that's as tidy as possible. Risk and protection, so mitigating the downsides of what can go wrong in life. And talking a little bit about legacy, which also includes estate planning and wills and things like that. With those stones in place, we then start building towards growing people's net wealth. So it's a matter of growing their net asset picture. Now, for most people, their assets will be driven by debt at first, but we're very focused on that net picture because that net picture, that net asset base, will then drive consistent income into your personal circumstances. And when we say consistent income, we're also talking about ideally passive income. As you build that passive income, you get closer and closer to that point of achieving financial freedom. And financial freedom for us is when your passive income exceeds your consistent living expenses. At that point, you can choose whether or not you wish to keep working, which I think is a really critical point in people's lives. Rather than waiting to 65 or 70, or for younger people, 75 potentially, to quote unquote retire, you can take that bull by the horns and really be intentional about the life you want to lead. So this is where a financial planner can really help over the long term. Life happens right along the way, so things will bump you off this path. So that constant tracking and reviewing and adhering to the plan forms a part of this. And another one that we've shared a few times already, and this is a really fundamental piece as well, is this is the planning process. These are the steps we go through as financial planners. I think there's 15,500 of us left in Australia, follow something along these 6 steps. And they are meeting, getting to know you. Number 3 is then preparing the advice, presenting the advice, number 4, and then implementing our recommendations and then tracking and reviewing that. We've gone through this a few times. It's on the recordings of the other ones, but that yellow line is a critical point. To the right of that yellow line is when advice exists. To the left of that yellow line, it's more of a diagnostic and investigative process. So that's an important distinction for down the track. Okay. Quickly double check. Okay, so let's have a quick chat about how we do it at the Advice Gallery. So to start with, it's worth exploring who we are at the Advice Gallery. So I am the financial advisor. So my name's Jordan Vaka. I've been doing this for about 15 or 16 years. And we operate under my financial services license, which is through my other company called Planning Solo Licensing. That licenses me to give advice on Australian financial products and services. It's a fairly broad license, but it is also independent. So we don't accept any sort of commissions. I work in the business of the Advice Gallery. Steve Matsoukas, who is the owner and driving force behind Loan Gallery, owns Advice Gallery as well. And his mission is to put out as much educational content to help people make the best financial decisions possible. He's really passionate about what financial planning can mean for people's lives at both a tactical and a strategic level. So it's a really exciting place to work in that regard. Below that, I have 2 assistants. They're both based in the Philippines. Kim is our office manager. She is the brains behind the operation. She does an incredible amount of work in an incredibly short span of time. She's absolutely invaluable, and you will deal with her if you engage us. Kim prepares 80% of the advice. Her technical skills are next level, but she also helps prepare all of the paperwork, which makes a world of difference for me and the business. So Kim Lee is our office manager. And we also have Jojo Cruz, who's just recently joined us. She's another assistant based in the Philippines, and she will be taking over some of the administrative work from Kim and helping integrate the way that we work in a much better way. So she'll be communicating with people directly. So you will also deal with Jojo along the way, should you choose to work with us. We have a 3rd person in the Philippines, Danica, whose primary role is to help with our marketing and communications. So she runs our social posts, chops up all these videos, makes them legible, posts them over on YouTube, posts all the blogs, does all that background work that's so necessary to drive such a strong educational process. So they're based in the Philippines. I live in Ballarat, but work out of the Port Melbourne office in Loan Gallery, and I'm there every Tuesday and Thursday, so we can meet there for in-person meetings. Obviously, we're flexible around that as well. In terms of work hours, so the team it's currently daylight savings time, so they work from 9:30 to 5:30 every day. When daylight savings changes, it's 8:30 to 9 till 5 every day of the week. That's quite early for them in the Philippines, so they start work at about 6 o'clock local time, but they're logged on by then, able to take calls and get to work with things as well. We don't work weekends, so we don't have appointments or meetings on Saturdays. Occasionally I'll be in the office catching up on emails and all that stuff that we fall behind on during the week, but Sundays are a definite no-go. We don't do any work on Sundays. In terms of booking availability, I do ask that any meetings or phone calls be booked at least a week in advance. If it's an urgent matter, by all means, we can do things earlier, but I find having a week in advance avoids us getting too swamped with work, too many peaks and troughs, and lets us manage our workload a lot better. It's really important to me that our business and my team don't have those really awful side effects of having really up and down troughs. I really like it to be consistent and steady so that we can put our best into the work that we do rather than running around putting out fires. So that's a little bit about how we work in the background. So let's hop into the first stage of that advice process, which is meet. Now, with meet, this is really where we first come into contact. So generally speaking, you will have come through to us from a referral from your finance broker. So you may have worked with them for a little while. They've probably helped you buy a house in the past. You might be one of the many people they've helped build their first home as well. So they'll have a conversation with you. You may contact them and say, look, I've got this thing on my mind. I'm looking to buy a business, or I need to have my super looked at, or, I'm 52, and if I work one more day longer than I need to, I may lose my mind. Um, so they'll then send me an email and say, hi, Jordan, I was just chatting with my client, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. They have some questions around X. Could you please give them a call on this number? Perfect. So I'll give you a call. We'll have a very quick chat. We'll go from there. Another option may be perhaps you've watched the webinar, you've caught us on YouTube, you've caught us around the traps, and you've checked out the website and you've sent through a website inquiry. In that case, you'll get a response where you can book in a phone call. So we use Microsoft Bookings for this part of the process. And it lets you find a time for a chat. It's about 15 minutes that we suggest you put aside in the calendar. So you can find a time, see, here in December, lock in a time, put in your details, and they'll send a confirmation through to yourself and me. Block out the time in our diaries, then I'll give you a call and we'll go from there. So either way, either of those two avenues, we will land in having our first phone call. In that first phone call, it is very much a get to know you. So we will not have any questions to any questions you're asking. We will not have any answers to any questions you are asking in that discussion. As I said, if you remember that yellow line, to the left of that is the diagnostic process. So this is really getting to find out how we can help, which is why we ask these three questions. Firstly, how can we help? Why now? And have you worked with an advisor before? So commonly it's, how can we help? Oh, I've got this income protection policy I need to have looked at, or um, I've inherited some money. I need to know what to do with it, or I need to finish work. I've been made redundant. What do I do? Great. That also answers the why now question. So redundancy, that's a very critical point. Divorce is similar. So is another sort of bereavement. For other people, it might be, look, I've been meaning to do some retirement planning for a couple of years now, but never really got around to it. So there might be a reason that that's happened now. Maybe one of your colleagues is retired, maybe your brother-in-law's retired and you're sick of him bragging about how great it is. So we'll explore that and see if it is an urgent matter and how quickly we need to get onto it. And the last question is, have you worked with an advisor before? A lot of that's curiosity. We operate quite differently to a lot of other advisors, so it doesn't really matter. But I do like to know if you have worked with, say, a bank advisor in the past. I find it's quite good to just explain a little bit about how we're a bit different. Uh, so out of that phone call, one of two things will happen. It'll either be, no, we're not really a great fit. Here's somebody else you can speak to. I'll send you an email with their details, or it's not really an area we can help with, or also it may be something we can help with, but the cost to you, outside this introductory special we're running, the cost to you could be prohibitive. So it might be something like, I need to change the investments in my super fund. We're going to charge you quite a fee to do that. Often you'll be better off just calling your super fund directly. So that's if it's a no. If it's not a great fit, we'll put you to the direction of the people that can help you the best. If we feel it is a good fit, the next step will be sending you an email with some information about us and booking in a time for the next stage, discover. And remember, we're still in that diagnostic phase of the process here. So discover, it's possibly the longest phase, I think, in the 6-step process. Because what we do is we first book in that exploration meeting. So this is the first meeting, 60 to 90 minutes, and we sit down and we get to know you. We get to know where you are now, where you want to go, what might happen in the meantime, what kind of speed bumps and roadblocks might get in your way. We also talk about what it would actually mean to you to achieve some of these things. So it's quite a broad discussion. Now, generally, we won't get into the nitty-gritty of the finances in that position, in that meeting, but often I do ask for people to bring along just some background info so we know kind of the size of the pool that we're swimming in. It's going to involve, a bit of a budget, income and expenses. Income's really easy. Expenses can be quite tough. We will cover that in future webinars. Investment information. So if you've got an investment property, just write down sort of the address, what you bought it for, what it's worth now, is there a loan attached, and what rent are you getting? If you have a share portfolio, just print out a portfolio valuation. If you have anything like that, just bring in the info so we know what we're talking about. And at least one statement for every superannuation fund and insurance policy, life insurance or income protection policy that you own. Should you engage us, part of the process will be you signing off on a third-party authority. We will send it to all those super funds and insurers, and we'll reference your member number or policy number on there so we can start asking questions. Now, this first meeting, as I said, it's pretty in-depth. We cover a lot of ground. It's a really meaningful meeting, I find. And so we offer two options for that. The first one is in person in the Port Melbourne office. I would recommend that path. I just find that kind of meeting, because it's so big and because it's the first time we will have met, meeting in person is normally the way to go. Alternatively, we can also meet via Teams on a video call, because I can appreciate timing doesn't always work, and locations, we don't need to be tied down to a location. Definitely a very viable option. We do quite a lot of calls in that mode, but just to flag that it's not quite the same as catching up in person. And a note as well that we record all of our meetings, and we are moving to a system where we can record our phone calls as well. And the reason for that is, in our meetings, I'm not sitting there scribbling the whole time. I can really have a conversation with you. And frankly, some of the systems out there now for transcribing and summarizing are way quicker than me having to sit there and write up notes afterwards, to be completely honest. And it's just a nice record of what we've discussed as well. And what we're starting to find, as we've been in this for a little while, we actually go back to some of those recordings a few years down the track and say, look, here's how anxious you were about certain things. Here's what we've done. Do you still feel this way? And that's a nice little reminder. Sometimes I get asked if we can organize meetings at home, so house calls. Honestly, no. We do, how do I put it? The work that we do is quite intensive, and we have quite a few people working through that at any one time. So the time required to do house calls actually makes that really restrictive. There are, of course, extenuating circumstances. If people can't physically make a meeting and if they're not familiar with video, we will work around people, but there are extra charges for that, and those charges aren't included in that introductory offer. So I haven't put it on there. It's very exceptional circumstances. But so we've had our first meeting. Sometimes there's tears, there's laughter, hopefully there's some meaning in it, and we walk away and we say, okay, great, now what do we do? So you will get an email from us within 24 hours of that meeting that just summarizes what we spoke about with a few action items. And those action items could be, look, here are 3 things for you guys to go and do. Rerun your budget, contact your super fund, speak to your accountant. Here are some action items for us to do. We will prepare some paperwork for you, get you some documents, get you a proposal. So it's all summarized in the one email. We will then send you an engagement letter within 5 days of that, which will lay out our understanding of where you are now, the services that I believe are most critical for you now, a timeline for delivery of those services, a quote, and the terms and conditions. Obviously, the quote, again, we will waive, you'll still be quoted the dollar amount, but they will all be waived at the end of the process. So there'll be no out-of-pocket cost. You'll have that proposal. You can then review it. We can have a discussion about it if you like. But for most people, we're just reiterating what we've already covered. So we will then move on to having that document signed, and then we can get back to work gathering more data. This is where it gets really detailed. So if you've worked with the guys from Loan Gallery, you've probably seen something like this already. We use a portal called File Invite, where we have a list of requests. We send that to you, and then we ask you to upload the PDFs or documents around all of those requirements. So I'm not sure if it's coming through on your screen, but there's things like we have a short fact find, which is a 2-page, 3-page Word document. You pop in your personal details and upload it through here. Photo ID, super statements, etc. Now you can see that with this information, the reason we use a portal rather than just having you send it to us via email, this is very sensitive information. It's really important to us that we make sure it's as secure as possible, hence the File Invite setup. There's also, as of this webinar, 2 questionnaires that we may ask you to fill out, and there will be some more coming on board. And for this, we use Jotform. Now, Jotform's a really great system, really good in the back end, but does have some limits around sort of where the data is kept. And there's just a few, not question marks, but it's not the gold standard how we would normally like it to be. But the gold standard options aren't really very good or easy to use. So to get around that, what we've done is we will provide you with an anonymized code to put in here to identify yourself. That's then reconciled at our back end so we know who it is. But other than that, there are no personal details that are added into this form. This one is about assessing your tolerance for investment risk. So how much volatility can you handle? How would you react if things were to drop by 20% in a 12-month period? Those kind of questions that if you've ever worked in finance before, you'll be familiar with. The insurance one is across 4 different scenarios. So if you were to pass away, if you were to be disabled, if you were to be diagnosed with a critical illness, or if you're unable to work for a prolonged period. In each of those scenarios, what do you actually want to have happen? What are your financial priorities? Now, we have designed the form there again that it's anonymous. So put in the information, the numbers, but that's all. We're not going to ask you for details or specifics. So my paranoia around cyber stuff may be coming through. We will also use those third-party authorities as I spoke about. Now, we also use that with your existing professionals if you would like us to. So we can speak to your accountant, we can speak to your lawyer, we can grab information for you on your behalf. We also do it with Centrelink, so that's a big part of what we're doing. And then my team, thankfully not me anymore, my team calls the different providers and gets the information we need. Super funds have gotten a lot better. Insurers are a bit of a mixed bag. Investment firms, they're okay. Other professionals, if your person's really hard to get to, like hard to reach, they'll be hard to reach for us as well. Centrelink is a rolling nightmare of hold times. They're getting better. They've been short-staffed for a long time. They've been gutted by the government. But just so you know, like 45 minutes is not an unusual period to spend on hold for Centrelink, which is why I think quite a big part of our business is that work. Now, this can take a few days if it's really simple, or it can take a few months if it's really complex. So if you're somebody that has a business with multiple entities, multiple professional advisors, super funds all over the place, there's a Centrelink entitlement in there and there's some complexity, it's probably going to take us 2 months to get the full picture. If you are a 36-year-old wage earner, who's got a super fund, a mortgage, a house, and some savings, it's probably going to be a lot quicker. So there's no real golden rule there. But once we have the information, we can get to work. And what that means is preparing the advice for you and for your family. Just a quick time check. The reason we collect the data that we do, particularly, this is probably a bit of a distinction in my business. I know other advice firms don't collect all this stuff. More power to them. I haven't always done it this way. But what I found is by collecting this data, firstly, I don't have to keep coming back to you during the process going, oh, hey, how much is your mortgage? Hey, what's the address again? Hey, it's all done in one fell swoop. And also by having a really comprehensive picture, we can see, okay, so your financial picture's like a circle. And you've maybe asked us to look at one segment of that circle. But then I've asked you for information about the whole circle, and you might be going, why the hell does he need all this? Another part of the circle might directly influence the advice in the segment we're looking at. So part of that might be superannuation. You've engaged us to review superannuation. Is there a cheaper fund out there? Is there a better option? Can we invest it better? Great. But from that, we then need to look at, okay, if we move you out of that super fund to a new one, does that trigger any insurance issues? Are you going to lose insurance? If you are going to lose insurance, can you afford to lose it? Or do you have a medical history that means you need to keep it? We then start talking about really nitty-gritty stuff like eligible service dates and components. Flowing on from that, maybe you've got a kid or two, or maybe you're a blended family. You've got kids from separate relationships. How do we make sure that estate planning scenario is factored into your superannuation advice? It might already be right in the fund you're in. Us moving you might trigger an issue with that. Then we've got investment risk tolerance. How does that flow onto your broader scenario? Your superannuation, if we look at it in isolation, we're probably doing you a disservice. We should also run a scenario to see where your super is going to end up come retirement, but we can't do that in isolation. So it's that kind of thing where we have the scope of work and we stick to that, but there's often bleed into the other areas of what we do. So we collect a very comprehensive sort of set of data, because then we get in to start preparing our advice for you. Kim and her team then start loading your information into our specialist financial planning software. We use something called Plutosoft, which allows us to cast really good scenario analysis and trajectory analysis over the next 25 years. Falling out of that as we get into the tactical side of things. So we prepare product comparisons. So if we're reviewing somebody's superannuation, we'll compare your existing super fund with at least two alternatives, one industry, one retail, and make sure there's a like-for-like comparison to see where the pricing ends up. We'll then do our DIRT analysis, so downsides, upsides, risks, and trade-offs to work out if it's worth changing. Sometimes moving to a cheaper super fund isn't worth it. So if you're somebody, we're working with somebody at the moment who is a barrister. He's working about 85, 90 hours a week. He would like to move from his current super fund, which is one of the major ones from the banks, to an industry super fund because they're cheaper and all his mates are in it. I get that. The issue is, though, he's 58 and he's going to be coming into retirement shortly, and he simply cannot afford the hours of hold time or administrative hassles that'll come with managing his own super through the industry fund that I'm talking about, which I nearly named and probably breached some sort of law. So we avoided that. So in that case, though it's going to be dearer, he may be better off going to a superior retail fund that offers better service level agreements and standards, because him wasting an hour of his time at $900 an hour would negate the entire savings that would come with moving to the industry fund. So we start talking about that DIRT analysis. And then finally, once we've rinsed it through the full filter of everything, we'll then come to you with a final recommendation. And that recommendation will have, we recommend you do ABC, and here's why. Here's the downside. Here are the risks to be aware of. But on balance, we recommend you do this because it'll improve your financial situation. So there is a bit of work that goes into that. And as a background here, if you've ever read anything about financial planning, the big push has been to simplify the process and to create a more efficient sausage factory so that everything comes out at the other end faster. I just don't think you can do that for personal advice. If it's not too grandiose, we see a little bit of overlap with the way doctors go about things. I don't want a doctor that's going to rush through things and just spit me out the same prescription he's given the last 5 people. I want the prescription to match my personal circumstances, and that's how we approach our advice. So it's the prepare stage. Now we've got the advice prepared, and just as a bit of context here, when we're working on a file, Kim and I in particular, we bounce around strategic advice ideas on a file note that we have. That file note generally runs to about 5 to 6 pages. It's just us exploring ideas, bouncing them around. Once we've done that, we then, that's the advice preparation file note, we'll then move into the statement of advice. Statement of advice, as I've mentioned earlier, is a legally mandated document. The Corporations Act and ASIC have made it very clear what's required in one. They really shouldn't be any more than 25 to 30 pages. I have seen some that are 150 pages. They're not great. But this document is saying, here's where you are now, or here's our understanding of where you are now. Here's our understanding of your current situation. Here are your goals and objectives. Here's our advice. Here's the cost of doing that advice. And here's the impact of replacing any products. So it should be a really usable, readable document, which is what we aspire to have it as. You'll then receive that with a stack of supporting documents, and that includes product disclosure statements. So that's the full summary of the document. Now, they're supposed to be readable as well. They're often 130 pages of legalese. There's a problem there, but on the whole, you can get the sort of snapshots as you read through it. There's often comparison documents. There's things called target market determinations. Everything is provided to you so you can make a fully informed decision. That statement of advice, it should be said, is a document upon which we expect you to make a decision. So it's often not just here's this, ignore it. It's here's this advice. How would you like to go about it? How would you like to proceed from here? And often historically, that was a point of some tension because, the person in my seat often only got paid if you went ahead with their advice. One thing I'm really proud of as an independent advisor is, in the nicest way possible, I don't care if you go ahead with our advice or not. I'm not incentivized to persuade you to do what I'm recommending. Our advice needs to stand on its own merits. And if you feel that it's not suitable for you after we've explained it and been through it all, it's completely your prerogative. You will not get a hard sell from us because, as I said, we're not incentivized for you to do what we're recommending. It is purely in your own best interest. Once we've done that, we're on to stage 4. This is when we get to advice point. So we've crossed the yellow line. We are now talking about advice. So everything from here on in during a formal client engagement is probably going to be seen as advisory. The reason that's important is it triggers a lot of the consumer protections that you have as a client. We've prepared the advice. You'll have a nice statement of advice. It's normally in a PDF that's about 15 or 20 pages long. What I will do is then record and explain a video going through the advice using Loom. So it's pretty detailed. They average at about 15 to 20 minutes. I think if you ask Kim, it's 25 minutes once I get my mouth running. But I go through it a lot of detail because the idea of that video is for you to watch it before we meet so you can be familiar with what we're recommending before we catch up. So then our advice meeting is all about exploring your questions and doubts and concerns rather than me saying, oh, look, here's 6 pages of extremely detailed technical back and forth and recommendations. You need to make a decision now. I want to give you enough runway to make an informed decision. In the email that you get around that, again, that is distributed using File Invite. There'll be a link to book in a presentation meeting, which is where we sit down and we go through the advice. I said email, but really it's through File Invite. You'll also get all the supporting documents, and then the meeting will be booked. Now, ideally, you will have watched the Loom video once, even twice before we've caught up, because then we get to review the advice. And you can say, Jordan, you wrote this bit, you said that in the video, it didn't make sense. Can we go through that again? Or this bit, oh, yeah, we got this completely. You explained it to me. And they, yeah, okay, great. You guys understood it. Let's move to the next thing. Any questions you might have. When you're ready, we'll then sign the implementation paperwork that Kim and her team would have prepared for you. Again, you will be under no pressure to do that in the meeting, but I will have the paperwork in the meeting simply for a matter of convenience. And we'll talk about why that is in a second. But if you want to, otherwise you take it home, you fill it out in your own time. Okay. So once it's done, so you've received the advice, you've made your decision about how you want to proceed, you will then fill out an authority to proceed. Well, we will fill it out with you. This is the final page in our statement of advice. And it's where you say, okay, yes, I would like to proceed, or no, I don't want to proceed, or I want to proceed, but with some amendments. And then we write down the amendments. That is the document we use as your acceptance of our advice. So in the unlikely event there's a dispute or something down the track, we will refer back to this because this is ultimately you saying, go and do these things now for us. We'll then work into the application form. So if we're making any changes to any sort of financial products, we will talk about your insurance. So there'll be an application form required around that. That'll also involve a personal statement, which maybe we will fill out with you, or we will arrange a tele underwriting meeting where the insurer will contact you and go through that form with you over the phone. That's a really great way to go about this, but at the moment, their wait times are at about 28 to 30 days, so it's less ideal. DoD, there is the duty of disclosure. That changed recently in the last few years, but at its simplest, it's your duty as an applicant to disclose anything that might be considered relevant to an insurer as they assess your needs for insurance. So there's a lot of paperwork here, and not just the paperwork, but as your application goes in, there'll be further follow-up stuff that we do. If we're recommending any changes around super, we will also be recommending a new account form. There'll be some investment changes form we need to do. These are different for each super fund. So, there's a fund out there. I think I can name them. Aware Super. They all require a hard copy wet signature form, whereas somebody like Macquarie will do it all online. So we work out the vagaries of the different funds. There'll be a binding death benefit nomination form for you to complete. We can't really give you too much advice around that. So we factor that into a discussion around your will. And often if you're making contributions to super and we're recommending changes, there'll be a notice of intent to claim a tax deduction form. If it's an investment account, so a non-superannuation investment account, again, new account form, we'll set up a direct debit authority to transfer the money from outside of the investment into the new account. And also if there's a recurring investment, a monthly contribution, we'll set up a DDR around that as well. And then really any other application forms. So we're very familiar with the age pension application forms from Centrelink. We're becoming increasingly familiar with the mod PT forms around Centrelink. Annuities are something we're doing more of. Aged care stuff we can help with. So it's really any application form to help implement the advice that we've recommended for you. Again, we've got some options around this meeting. We can meet up in person if you're ready in our meeting. We can get all the paperwork signed there and then I'll scan that through to Kim and the team, and it'll get processed. That is the most convenient option, but I'm also very cognizant of the fact that being made to make a decision in that meeting can feel a bit pressured. So there are other options. So we use File Invite. We try to use Adobe Sign where we can. Otherwise, Kim will prepare the document for you to sign, print at your end, and then sign it off. The other option is, the old snail mail. We do that quite a bit. It's just slower. Other than that, it's fine. We've all been doing it for 100 years. When it's all done, and again, this could be a matter of days, it could be a matter of months. My longest case was a Centrelink age pension application that took 11 months. We eventually got it across the line by contacting the local member of parliament, and they got the whip cracking. That was our longest one. So it was 11 months. So anything less than that. Commonly, it's probably 2 to 3 months for insurance, 2 to 4 weeks for superannuation, 1 to 3 weeks for investments, and Centrelink could be anywhere, up to 6 months, really. You'll then get a confirmation email from Kim or from Jojo that'll just say, here's what we've done. Here are some things you should know about. So, make sure you update your employer with your new super fund. If you ever need to make an insurance claim, contact us. Here's our rate schedule, that kind of thing. We also like to know how we went, if there's anything we missed, anything we could have done better. And there'll be a link in there if you're so inclined to leave us a review. Obviously, they help us grow our business. And then some discussion around next steps. And the next steps we're talking about there, a large part of that will be the track module of the advice process. So as we're working together, what's the best way to put this? If you recall the financial freedom pyramid from quite a few slides ago, you may engage us to help you reach that yellow pinnacle of the pyramid. In which case, realistically, it's probably a 5 to 7 year project of rolling different engagements and different projects to give you the best chance of getting to that point. You may also just say, no, I just want to focus on one of the building blocks. I just want to look at my budget, or I just want to look at my insurances. I know the whole story. I know everything you can do, but let's just focus on that little bit. The reality is that after that's done, you probably don't really need us anymore. You can just come back to us when you're ready to do another segment of the chart, which is completely fine. So once we're done in that case, you've got our contact details. You'll stay on the mailing list. You'll still get invited to things, but just come to us when you have any financial questions. The other side of it is when you're engaging us to help you build that pyramid, or you want somebody to manage your insurances, or you want somebody to stay on top of your investments, you will engage us for a recurring service engagement. We will help you we will flag if we think this is the right thing for you or not. So for some people it is, for some people, frankly, it's not. So we'll have that honest discussion with you. If you decide to engage us on this side, we'll get a new engagement letter prepared. We'll outline in detail the advice and services required for the next 11 months. Why 11 months? 12 months triggers a different set of requirements and responsibilities under the Act that add a lot of time, effort, and cost for no benefit to you or to us. So we work to maximum of 11-month engagements. And at the end of that engagement, you know that it's finished. So there's no rolling debit that'll continue, which has been the issue in the past. We will break out different payment options. So some stuff you can pay for through super. Most stuff you have to pay for directly. We just got guidance from the ATO last week, though, that they are making a lot of these fees tax deductible. So that's quite exciting to see. So that'll be something we'll go through as well. Now, again, that introductory offer would still apply in this case, so you wouldn't have any fees payable for those first, at least through to the 30th of June of 2024, and we'll include a kind of a Gantt chart service timeline of when we expect to be delivering each item on the engagement. In terms of sort of an annual yearly cadence, we'll have at least one meeting a year. I know some firms offer 3 to 4 meetings a year, and I think in certain circumstances that's very important, but for most people, once a year is probably enough. We'll do a lot of prep work beforehand as well. You'll get a new file invite, update information, all that sort of thing. But in the back end, we will be maintaining oversight and management of your finances. So, for instance, a big thing we're doing a lot of term deposits. Interest rates have gone up at the current moment, so what we will often do is have at least two term deposits going for our account holders when the balance is enough, a 6-month and a 12-month. And then just keep rolling on and off. So, that's just ongoing management. Just make sure that you're maximizing the interest on that defensive component. Another option, if people are looking for it, is to have myself and my team on call. There's 2 different standards of that. So you can have us on call 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. For an extra kind of cost, you can extend that to 24/7, which means that we'll take your calls on Saturdays and Sundays, or I will. It is a significant increase in cost because it's a significant increase in commitment. But for some people that are really nervous or going through a lot of stuff, it can be quite valuable. That is that. There's my details. Send through an email to hello@theartadvicegallery.com.au or send me a text message or give me a call. I'll stop sharing the screen now. So I'll just give you another moment to take that down. Again, this will be on YouTube by the end of the week. We have to look into sharing the slides. That's the next thing we'll do as well. That'll be on the website. Stop sharing. And that was that. Okay, so we didn't have the biggest audience today, but thank you so much to you guys for attending and for listening in. If you did have any questions, feel free to send them through. I will flag again, no advice fees through to the 30th of June 2024. So if you did want to have a chat around how we could help, just send me a message on the email hello@theadvicegallery.com.au or go to theadvicegallery.com.au and there is a link to send through an inquiry and we'll book in a time to have a chat in the new year. I am wrapping up close of business tomorrow, Tuesday the 19th. So I'll be off from the 20th of December to I think the 10th of January. So I'll take this opportunity to wish you a very Merry Christmas. Have a really great break. Hope it's nice and rejuvenating. If you have any questions, send me those emails. Otherwise, we will see you next year at our next set of webinars, and we'll go from there.